I was arranging fresh flowers in the front room when my son Marcus walked in with his wife Brielle and said the words that would shatter everything. "Pack your things, Mom. You and Dad are moving to the state facility on Monday." Before I could respond, my husband Vincent, silent for months after his diagnosis, looked up from his chair and spoke clearly for the first time in weeks. "Tell them about the envelope, Claire. The one from the law firm." I had no idea what he meant, but the way Marcus went pale told me my quiet, fading husband had been far more aware than any of us realized. "Hello, friends. Thank you for being here with me today. Before I share what happened in my family, I'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling me which city or country you're listening from. It means the world to know how far these stories travel. Now, settle in. This one is long, and it goes places I never imagined my own life would go. This house has a heartbeat. I've lived here for 37 years, and I know its rhythms like I know my own pulse. In the morning, when sunlight breaks through the magnolia trees in the yard, the old hardwood floors warm and expand with a gentle creak. In the evening, as the Alabama heat finally releases its grip, the walls cool and settle with soft pops and sighs. Vincent's grandfather built this house in 1952 with his own hands, timber by timber, nail by nail. He built it to last, to shelter generations, to be a place where family gathered and memories took root. I was preparing my mother's recipe for buttermilk biscuits that morning, the kind Vincent used to devour by the half dozen when we were newlyweds. These days he barely ate anything, but I kept cooking them anyway. Hope, I suppose, or stubbornness, or maybe just the comfort of familiar rituals when everything else was slipping away. The kitchen smelled like butter and flour and the faint jasmine that grew wild outside the window. I was cutting the dough into rounds when I heard Brielle's voice cut through the piece like a knife through silk. "Claire, we need you in the living room. Family meeting." Her tone wasn't a request. It was a summons. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked into the front room where Vincent sat in his leather recliner, the one his grandfather had reupholstered 3 times because he refused to let it go. Marcus stood by the fireplace, his posture rigid, official. Brielle perched on the edge of the sofa, her designer handbag perfectly positioned beside her, her expression carefully neutral. This was staged. I knew it immediately. "Sit down, Mom," Marcus said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm fine standing," I replied. Something in my gut was already coiling tight. "We've made some decisions," Brielle began, her voice smooth and practiced. "About Dad's care, about the house, about what's best for everyone going forward." Best for everyone. That phrase. I'd heard it before, usually right before someone was about to do something that was best for themselves and terrible for everyone else. "Vincent's condition is deteriorating," Marcus continued, still avoiding my gaze. "He needs professional care, 24/7 monitoring. You can't provide that here, Mom. You're 72 years old. It's too much." "I've been caring for your father for 18 months, I said quietly. "We're managing." "You're not managing," Brielle interjected. "You're exhausted. The house is too big. It's too much for both of you. We found a wonderful facility, Oak Ridge Senior Living. They have a memory care unit. They take couples. You can have adjoining rooms." Adjoining rooms. Not the bedroom Vincent and I had shared for 37 years. not the bed where we'd held each other through joy and grief and everything between. Adjoining rooms in a facility. "We're not going anywhere," I said. My voice was steady, but my hands were shaking. "Mom, this isn't a discussion." Marcus finally looked at me. His eyes were hard, decided. "The papers are already filed. We have medical power of attorney. Dad signed it 2 years ago when he was first diagnosed. You're not thinking clearly. This is what's best." "You filed papers without talking to me?" "We're talking to you now," Brielle said, and her tone was so patronizing I wanted to slap her. "The movers come Friday to start packing your personal items. You'll go to Oak Ridge on Monday. We've already paid the first month." The room tilted. I reached for the back of a chair to steady myself. "You had no right. This is our home, Vincent's home." "Actually," Brielle pulled a folder from her pristine handbag, "this is Marcus's home. Vincent signed the deed over to him last year. It's all legal and recorded. We own this house now, Claire. We've been generous, letting you stay this long. But it's time." The words hit me like physical blows. Vincent wouldn't have. He couldn't have. I looked at my husband, slumped in his chair, his eyes distant and unfocused as they'd been for months. The Alzheimer's had been stealing him, piece by piece, day by day, turning the brilliant architect who'd designed buildings across 3 states into a man who sometimes couldn't remember my name. "Vincent," I whispered, kneeling beside his chair, "did you sign the house away?" He looked at me. For a moment, his eyes were empty. Then something shifted, a curtain lifting, a door opening. He sat up straighter, his gaze sharpened, focused, locked onto Marcus with an intensity I hadn't seen in half a year. "Tell them about the envelope, Claire," Vincent said. His voice was clear, strong, absolutely lucid. "The one from the law firm. The one that came last Tuesday." I stared at him. "Vincent, I don't know what you mean. There was no envelope." "Check the sideboard," he said. "3rd drawer, behind the napkins." Marcus and Brielle exchanged glances. Brielle's carefully maintained composure flickered. "Dad, you're confused. There's no envelope." "Check the drawer," Vincent repeated, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. "Go ahead, Claire. Show them." My heart was pounding as I crossed to the antique sideboard, the one that had belonged to Vincent's grandmother. I opened the 3rd drawer. Linen napkins, exactly where they'd been for years. I pushed them aside. My fingers found paper, a large manila envelope, official-looking, with the return address of Harrison, Mitchell and Associates, Attorneys at Law, Birmingham. I pulled it out slowly. It was sealed. The postmark was dated last Tuesday, exactly as Vincent said. How did he know? How could he know? He hadn't had a clear moment in months. He couldn't remember what day it was, couldn't remember eating breakfast. But he knew about an envelope I'd never seen? "Open it," Vincent said. There was something in his voice, not confusion, not the wandering tone of dementia. This was the voice of the man I'd married, sharp, certain, in control. My hands trembled as I tore open the seal. Inside were documents, legal documents. I scanned the first page, my mind struggling to process what I was reading. Letters of intent, power of attorney revocation, property title dispute, Fraud investigation. I don't understand, I whispered. Read it out loud, Vincent said. All of it. Let Marcus hear what his lawyer sent me. His lawyer? I looked at Marcus. His face had gone white. The one he hired to forge my signature, Vincent continued, his voice cutting like steel. The one who got sloppy. The one who didn't realize I've been far more aware than I've let anyone believe. The room went silent, except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Brielle stood up slowly, her handbag clutched in front of her like a shield. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Dad, you don't know what you're saying. You're having one of your episodes. Sit down, Marcus. Vincent's command was so sharp, so utterly unlike the confused man he'd been for months, that Marcus actually sat. Claire, read the letter. Read it so everyone understands exactly what's been happening in this house. I pulled out the first document with shaking hands. It was from the law firm, addressed to Vincent. Dear Mr. Carver, I read aloud, pursuant to our investigation into the property transfer recorded on March 15th of last year, we have discovered significant irregularities. The signature on the deed of transfer does not match your verified signature on file with previous legal documents. Furthermore, our handwriting analyst has confirmed with 98% certainty that the signature was not made by you. We have notified the county recorder's office and initiated proceedings to void the transfer. Additionally, we have filed a complaint with the State Bar Association regarding the notary who certified this document, as our records show she was not present at any signing, and her notary license had already expired at the time of the alleged transfer. The words fell into the room like stones into still water. The ripples spread, touched everything, changed everything. This is ridiculous, Brielle said, but her voice was thin. That's some kind of scam, someone trying to... Be quiet, Brielle. Vincent's words were ice. He pushed himself up from the chair, and I saw him stand fully upright for the first time in months, his back straight, his shoulders square. The confused, shuffling man was gone. In his place stood the Vincent I remembered. You're both going to sit there, and you're going to listen, and then you're going to leave this house and never come back. Dad, you're not well, Marcus started. I'm perfectly well. Vincent walked across the room to the sideboard, his gait steady, purposeful. He opened the bottom drawer and pulled out a small leather journal. I've been documenting everything, every visit, every conversation, every time you thought I was too far gone to understand what you were saying about me, about this house, about your plans. He opened the journal and began to read. October 5th. Marcus and Brielle arrived at 2:15 p.m. Discussed selling the house immediately after my death. Brielle suggested we could accelerate the timeline. Marcus laughed. October 23rd. Heard Brielle on the phone with someone named Derek. Said, and I quote, "The old man is practically vegetables already. Another few months and we won't have to wait anymore." November 2nd. Marcus brought papers for me to sign. Said they were for updated medical directives. I saw the deed of transfer in the stack. Pretended not to notice. Signed nothing. They took the papers anyway. He looked up from the journal. His eyes were burning. I was aware of all of it, every poisonous word, every scheme, every time you stood in this house that my grandfather built with his own hands and plotted how to take it from us. Marcus had gone from white to gray. You've been faking? This whole time? Not faking. The Alzheimer's is real. The confusion is real. But it comes and goes, and you were both too eager to believe I was completely gone to notice when I was lucid. You saw what you wanted to see, a mindless old man you could manipulate. This is insane, Brielle said, standing up. We were trying to help. We were trying to make sure you both were taken care of. You forged my signature on a deed, Vincent said flatly. That's not help. That's theft. That's fraud. That's a felony. We can explain, Marcus said, his voice desperate now. The lawyer said it was a gray area. You'd already agreed in principle. I agreed to nothing, Vincent cut him off. Claire, there's more in that envelope. Keep reading. I pulled out the next document. It was an investigative report from a private detective. I skimmed it quickly, my breath catching. Bank records, large withdrawals from Vincent's accounts, transfers to an account in Marcus's name, $20,000 over the past year, $50,000 the month before. You've been stealing from him, I whispered. From us. We've been paying for his care, Brielle snapped. Those medical bills don't pay themselves. Vincent's insurance covers his medical bills, I said, the anger finally breaking through my shock. I've been paying them myself, every single one. So where did this money go? Investment opportunities, Marcus muttered. Things you wouldn't understand. Read the next page, Claire, Vincent said quietly. I did. It was a report on Marcus's business dealings, failed ventures, massive debts, a gambling problem that had cost him over $200,000 in the past 3 years. He'd been hemorrhaging money and stealing from his own father to cover it. You were going to put us in a home and sell this house to pay your debts, I said, the pieces falling together. That's what this was about, not our care, your debts. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stared at the floor. Brielle's mask had finally cracked, her face twisted with anger and fear. You have 1 hour to get out of my house, Vincent said. Take nothing but what you came with. If you're still here when I call the sheriff, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. And tomorrow, my attorney will be filing criminal charges for fraud, theft, and elder abuse. You'll both be lucky if you don't go to prison. Dad, please, Marcus looked up, and for a moment I saw the little boy he'd been. We can fix this. We'll pay it back. You stole from your own father, Vincent said. You forged legal documents. You tried to take the home my grandfather built. You called your mother a confused old woman who couldn't think clearly. You plotted to lock us away in a facility so you could strip everything we'd built over 37 years of marriage. He paused, his voice dropping to something cold and final. You are not my son anymore. Get out. Vincent, I whispered. Part of me wanted to intervene, wanted to soften this, wanted to find some way to bridge this chasm. He was still our son, our only child. But Vincent looked at me, and I saw in his eyes the depth of the betrayal he'd endured. Months of pretending, months of hearing his own child wish him dead, months of being treated like an object, an obstacle, a problem to be removed. They made their choices, Claire, he said softly. Now they live with the consequences. Marcus stood slowly. Brielle was already at the door, her handbag clutched to her chest. You'll regret this, she hissed, when you're dying alone and there's no one to take care of you, when you need us and we're not there. We'll manage just fine without you, I said. My voice was steady now, certain. We always have. They left. The door closed behind them with a quiet click that sounded like the end of something. Or maybe the beginning. Vincent sank back into his chair, and I saw the exhaustion wash over him. The lucidity that had blazed so bright flickered, dimmed. "Vincent?" I knelt beside him. "Are you still with me?" He looked at me, and his eyes were already starting to cloud again. "Did I do the right thing?" he whispered. "He's our boy, Claire. He's our boy." "He stopped being our boy a long time ago," I said gently, taking his hand. "You protected us. You were so brave." "I love you," he murmured. 37 years. Best years of my life. "I love you too," I whispered. "Always." He closed his eyes, drifting, the moment of clarity fading back into the fog. I sat there on the floor beside his chair, holding his hand, and I cried. Not for what we'd lost today, but for what we'd lost long before. A son who'd chosen greed over love. A future we'd imagined that would never exist. But we still had this house. We still had each other. And for however long Vincent's mind would let him stay with me, that would be enough. The days that followed were strange and quiet. Vincent slipped back into the fog of his illness, the bright clarity of that confrontation fading like a dream. Sometimes he remembered Marcus. Sometimes he asked when our son was coming to visit. Those were the hardest moments, when I had to decide whether to tell him the truth or let him live in the kinder version of reality his broken mind had created. I chose differently each time, depending on how strong I felt that day. The lawyers moved forward with the criminal complaint. Detective Sarah Chen came to the house to take my statement. She was a small woman, with kind eyes and a notebook she filled with precise handwriting as I told her everything. "Your husband is a remarkable man," she said when I finished. "To have the presence of mind to document everything while dealing with dementia, that's extraordinary." "He always was brilliant," I said. "The disease couldn't take that completely. Not yet." "You should know," Detective Chen said carefully. "Cases like this rarely go to trial. The evidence is overwhelming. Your son's attorney will almost certainly recommend a plea deal. Marcus and his wife will likely face probation, restitution, and permanent criminal records. But prison time is unlikely for a first offense." "I don't care about punishment," I said. "I just want them away from us. I want to know they can't come back and do this again." "The restraining order will guarantee that," she assured me. "And once the deed transfer is officially voided, you'll be secure in your home." Secure in our home. It sounded simple, but it felt like everything. I was washing dishes that evening when the doorbell rang. I dried my hands, my heart rate picking up. We hadn't had visitors since Marcus left. I checked the peephole and saw a young woman I didn't recognize, holding a folder. "Mrs. Carver?" she said when I opened the door. "My name is Rebecca Chan. I'm a social worker with the County Aging Services Department. May I come in?" My stomach dropped. "Did Marcus send you?" "No," she said quickly. "This is a routine wellness check. We received a report that there might be a vulnerable adult at this address in need of services." "Who made the report?" "I'm not at liberty to say. May I come in?" I let her in because I had no choice. She was polite, professional, and thorough. She spoke with Vincent, who was having a bad day and barely responded. She toured the house, checked the kitchen, the medications, the safety measures I'd installed. She asked me dozens of questions about Vincent's care, about my own health, about our support system. "Mrs. Carver," she said finally, sitting across from me at the kitchen table, "I'm going to be honest with you. Your husband's care needs are extensive. You're doing an admirable job, but you're also 72 years old. You have high blood pressure. According to your own doctor, whom we contacted, you've been canceling your own medical appointments to care for your husband." "I'm managing fine," I said. "You're burning out," she corrected gently. "I've seen it 1,000 times. Caregivers who sacrifice everything, who run themselves into the ground until they collapse. Then both people end up in crisis." "Are you here to tell me I have to put Vincent in a facility?" "No, I'm here to tell you that you have options. In-home care services, respite care, adult day programs, meal delivery. There are resources available. You don't have to do this alone." I felt something crack open in my chest. I can't afford most of that. "There are programs. Medicare covers some services. There's a sliding scale community program. Let me help you apply." She left me with a stack of pamphlets and a sense that maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to carry this entire burden on my own shoulders. That night, I filled out the applications while Vincent slept. By the end of the week, we had a home health aide coming 3 mornings a week. Her name was Patricia, and she was a sturdy woman with warm brown skin and a laugh that filled the whole house. "You've been doing this all alone?" she asked on her first day, watching me maneuver Vincent from his bed to his chair. "Baby, you're going to break your back." "I've managed," I said. "Managing and thriving are 2 different things," she said. "You don't have to be a martyr. Let me help." It took time to trust her, to let go, to accept that allowing someone else to help didn't mean I was failing Vincent. But slowly, I did. Patricia became part of our routine. She bathed Vincent, helped him dress, sat with him while I took walks or went to my own doctor's appointments or simply sat in the garden and breathed. The respite was a gift, and with it came clarity. I started going through Vincent's papers more carefully. The journal he'd kept was thorough, but there were other documents I'd never examined. Bank statements I'd been too overwhelmed to review. Legal papers I'd signed without reading carefully because I'd trusted my son to handle things. What I found made my blood run cold. The theft had been going on for 3 years, not 1. Marcus had been systematically draining Vincent's accounts, always just under the amounts that would trigger fraud alerts. He'd taken out a line of credit against the house without our knowledge. He'd changed the beneficiary on Vincent's life insurance policy from me to himself. Every financial violation I discovered felt like another betrayal. But with each one, my resolve hardened. This wasn't just about protecting ourselves anymore. This was about making sure Marcus faced the full consequences of what he'd done. I called Detective Chen. "There's more," I said. "Much more." The investigation expanded. The district attorney's office got involved. What had started as a simple case of deed fraud bloomed into something far larger. Wire fraud, identity theft, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. The charges multiplied, and with each new charge, Marcus's attorney became more desperate to make a deal. "They're offering full restitution," Detective Chen told me over the phone. "He'll pay back every penny he took, plus interest. He'll plead guilty to a single count of financial exploitation, serve 2 years probation, and surrender any claim to your estate. It's a good deal, Mrs. Carver. Is it? I asked. He stole from his own father. He tried to take our home. He called me incompetent, and he gets probation? He gets a felony record, she said. He loses his real estate license. He'll never be able to work in finance or property management again. His wife is divorcing him, by the way. She filed last week, claiming she knew nothing about the fraud. Did she know? Oh, she knew. We have recordings of her discussing it with Marcus, but she's smarter than he is. She's testifying against him in exchange for immunity. Brielle was saving herself. Of course she was. I felt no surprise, only a weary acceptance that this was who these people were, who they'd always been, underneath the facade of family dinners and birthday cards and pretended affection. I'll accept the deal, I told Detective Chen. On one condition. I want a statement read into the record at his sentencing. I want him to hear what he did to us. You can make a victim impact statement, she said. That's your right. The sentencing hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. I marked it on the calendar and tried not to think about it, but it loomed over everything, a reckoning I dreaded and needed in equal measure. Vincent continued to decline. The moments of clarity became rarer, briefer. He spent most days in his chair, dozing or staring at the television without really seeing it. But sometimes, in the evenings, he'd reach for my hand. "Claire," he'd say, and there'd be recognition in his eyes. "Are we safe?" "We're safe," I'd tell him. "I promise, we're safe." And we were. The deed was voided. The house was secured in my name alone, with ironclad protections that Marcus could never touch. Vincent's remaining assets were in a trust managed by a professional fiduciary. We had care. We had support. We had our home. But what we didn't have was our son. And on the hard days when Vincent asked about him, I had to decide whether that truth or that lie would be kinder. I usually chose the lie. "He's busy with work, honey. He'll visit soon." Vincent would nod, satisfied, and drift back into whatever fog he lived in. And I'd sit beside him, holding his hand, knowing that our son would never visit again. That the relationship we'd poured 38 years into was as dead as if Marcus himself had died. Maybe deader, because at least with death you could grieve cleanly. The day of the sentencing arrived cold and gray. Patricia stayed with Vincent while I drove myself to the courthouse. I'd written my statement in longhand, the words coming slowly over many nights at the kitchen table. I'd revised it a dozen times, torn it up twice, and finally settled on the simplest version of the truth. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Marcus sat at the defense table with his attorney, a sharp-faced woman who looked expensive. He'd lost weight. His suit hung loosely on his frame. He didn't look at me when I walked in. The proceeding was formal, procedural. The charges were read. Marcus pled guilty in a voice I barely recognized. The judge accepted the plea and asked if there were any victim impact statements. "Yes, Your Honor," the prosecutor said. "Mrs. Claire Carver." I stood and walked to the front of the courtroom. My hands were shaking. I unfolded my statement and looked at the judge because I couldn't look at Marcus. Not yet. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "My name is Claire Carver. Marcus is my only child. I gave birth to him 38 years ago. I raised him in the house my husband's grandfather built. I taught him to read, to ride a bike, to treat people with kindness and respect. I sacrificed my own career to be home with him. I volunteered at his school. I attended every soccer game, every science fair, every graduation. I loved him with every piece of my heart. I paused, swallowed. 18 months ago, my husband was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. It's a cruel illness that steals the person you love piece by piece while their body remains. I became Vincent's full-time caregiver. I fed him, bathed him, sat with him through the confusion and fear. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But I did it because I loved him. Because after 37 years of marriage, that's what love means. You don't abandon people when they become inconvenient. Now I let myself look at Marcus. He was staring at the table, his jaw tight. My son saw my husband's illness as an opportunity. He forged legal documents. He stole money from his father's accounts. He plotted to have us removed from our home so he could sell it to pay his gambling debts. He called me incompetent. He called his father a vegetable. He discussed with his wife whether they could accelerate the timeline of his father's death. I heard someone gasp softly in the courtroom. The judge's expression had hardened. When I think about what Marcus did, I don't just mourn the money or the violation of our trust. I mourn the son I thought I raised. I mourn the man I believed him to be, because that man never existed, or he died somewhere along the way, and I never noticed. My voice cracked. I steadied it. Vincent and I are safe now. We have our home, we have care, we will be fine. But there is a hole in our family that will never be filled, a relationship that will never be repaired. Marcus didn't just steal from us. He stole the future we'd imagined, the grandchildren we'd hoped to know, the comfort of believing that when we died, we would die surrounded by family who loved us. I folded the paper. Your Honor, I don't know what punishment is appropriate for stealing your parents' future, but I know this. What Marcus did was not a mistake. It was not a moment of poor judgment. It was a calculated betrayal that lasted years. He looked at his father's deteriorating mind and his mother's exhaustion and saw only dollar signs. That's not a son. That's a predator. And I ask you to sentence him accordingly. I walked back to my seat. The silence in the courtroom was complete. Marcus's attorney stood to make her argument for leniency, but I saw the judge's face, and I knew it wouldn't matter. Judge Anderson sentenced Marcus to 4 years in prison, suspending 2 years in favor of probation, and ordered full restitution plus $50,000 in additional damages. It was more than I'd expected, more than the plea deal had promised. The judge had used her discretion. Mr. Carver, she said, looking directly at Marcus, you violated the most sacred trust that exists, the trust between parent and child. You exploited your father's illness and your mother's devotion. You are fortunate that the state of Alabama does not have the death penalty for betrayal of family, because if it did, I would consider it in your case. As it stands, you will serve 2 years in state prison, followed by 2 years of supervised probation, during which time you will make monthly restitution payments. You will have no contact with your parents for the duration of your sentence and probation. If you violate that order, I will reinstate the suspended portion of your sentence. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor, Marcus whispered. I hope you use your time in prison to reflect on what you've done, the judge continued. And I hope that someday you become the kind of man your mother believed she raised. But I doubt it. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down with a sharp crack. Marcus was led away in handcuffs. He looked back once, and our eyes met across the courtroom. I saw no remorse there, only anger, only resentment, only the belief that somehow this was all unfair to him. I left the courthouse and sat in my car for 20 minutes, just breathing. It was done. The legal battle was over. Justice, such as it was, had been served. I drove home slowly, taking the long way, passing the places that held our family history. The park where we'd had Marcus's birthday parties, the school he'd attended, the ice cream shop where we'd gone every Friday in summer. All those memories felt tainted now, like old photographs that had been doctored, made to show something that was never real. When I got home, Patricia met me at the door. "How did it go?" she asked gently. "It's over," I said. 2 years in prison, then probation. She pulled me into a hug, and I let myself cry against her shoulder. All the tears I'd held back in the courtroom, all the grief I'd carried for months, it poured out of me while Patricia held me and made soft, comforting sounds, and didn't tell me it would be okay, because we both knew it wouldn't. Not really. Not ever. After a while, I pulled away, wiped my eyes. "How was Vincent?" "He's been asking for you," she said. "Good day today." Very present. I found him in his chair by the window, watching the birds at the feeder. He turned when I came in, and his face lit up. "Claire, where have you been?" "I had to go into town," I said. "Legal things. Nothing to worry about." He studied my face. "You've been crying." I sat beside him, took his hand. "Yes. Is it Marcus?" The clarity in his voice was startling. "Is it about what he did?" "Yes," I whispered. "He's going to prison, Vincent, for what he did to us." Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then he squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to stop him sooner. I'm sorry you had to go through this." "You were so strong," I said. "You saved us. You protected us when I didn't even know we needed protecting." "I won't remember this tomorrow," he said, and his voice was thick with grief. "I won't remember any of it. The clarity comes and goes. But right now, in this moment, I need you to know something. You are the best thing that ever happened to me. These 37 years, you are my life, Claire. Whatever happens with my mind, whatever I forget, that truth lives in my bones." I couldn't speak. I just held his hand and let the tears fall silently. "And Marcus," Vincent continued, his voice hardening slightly, "he made his choices. He's our son, and some part of me will always love the child he was. But the man he became, that man is a stranger. We grieve him, and then we let him go." "I don't know how to let go," I whispered. "We do it together," Vincent said. "Day by day, you and me, like we've done everything else." That evening, after Vincent had fallen asleep in his chair and Patricia had gone home, I sat alone in the quiet house. I took out old photo albums, the ones documenting Marcus's childhood. Baby pictures, first steps, Christmas mornings, a life documented in carefully preserved images. I looked at those photos and tried to find the moment when things went wrong. When did the sweet child become the predatory adult? Was it something we did? Something we failed to do? Or was there always something in him that we didn't want to see? I would never know. And maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was protecting what remained. What mattered was the life Vincent and I still had together, however much time his failing mind would allow. I closed the albums and put them away in the attic. Not destroyed because that felt too final, but not displayed either, not celebrated, just preserved, like artifacts from a civilization that no longer existed. The weeks after the sentencing fell into a new rhythm. Patricia continued coming 3 mornings a week. A physical therapist started visiting to help keep Vincent mobile. Meals on Wheels delivered lunch. I joined a support group for caregivers of people with dementia, and sitting in that circle of exhausted, grieving people who understood, I felt less alone than I had in years. Vincent's good days became rarer. The windows of clarity narrowed to brief moments, a flash of recognition in his eyes, a squeeze of my hand, his name for me spoken clearly before the fog rolled back in. I treasured those moments like jewels, knowing each one might be the last. On a Tuesday in October, 6 months after Marcus was sentenced, I received a letter. It was from the prison, and the return address made my hands shake. I stood in the kitchen for 5 minutes, just staring at it, before I finally opened it. The letter was from Marcus. 2 pages of cramped handwriting. "Dear Mom," it began. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me. I know the judge ordered no contact, but my counselor here says I need to write this, even if you never read it, even if you throw it away. So here goes." I almost did throw it away, but something made me keep reading. "I've had a lot of time to think. That's pretty much all there is to do here. Think and regret. I want you to know I understand now what I did. Not just the legal stuff, the fraud and theft. I understand what I did to you and Dad on a human level. I destroyed your trust. I treated you like obstacles instead of people. I convinced myself that I deserved the house, deserved the money, deserved everything you'd built because I was your son. As if being born into a family entitled me to steal from it." The words were painful to read. Part of me didn't believe them. Part of me wondered if this was just another manipulation, another scheme. "I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I'm sorry. I am truly, deeply sorry. I look back at the man I was, standing in your living room, demanding you leave your own home, and I don't recognize him. Or maybe I recognize him too well, and that's worse. That person was me. That cruelty, that greed, that was all me. And I have to live with that." He went on to describe his life in prison, the therapy he was required to attend, the classes on financial responsibility and addiction, the work he did in the prison library. It all sounded like rehabilitation, like change, but I'd been fooled before. The letter ended simply. "I love you, Mom. I know I have no right to say that after what I did, but it's true. I hope Dad is okay. I hope you're okay. I hope someday you can think of me without only feeling pain. Love, Marcus." I folded the letter carefully and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. I couldn't. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal still too raw. Maybe someday I'd be able to read it without crying. Maybe someday I'd be able to separate the child I'd loved from the man who'd tried to destroy us. But not today. Vincent passed away on a cold morning in January. I woke up next to him, as I had for 37 years, and I knew immediately that he was gone. There was a stillness to him, a peace. He'd slipped away in his sleep, exactly as I'd always hoped he would. No pain, no fear, just a quiet passage from one state to another. I held his hand and said goodbye. I told him I loved him. I thanked him for every year, every moment, every sacrifice. And then I called the hospice nurse, and the machinery of death began its work. The funeral was small. A few old friends, colleagues from Vincent's architecture firm. Patricia came, and Detective Chen. No one from Marcus's side of the family. I'd notified them, but they stayed away, uncertain whether they were welcome or whether association with me would taint them by proxy. I scattered Vincent's ashes under the magnolia tree in our yard, the one that had shaded us through 3 decades of summers. It felt right. He was home. He would always be home. I was alone in the house now, 73 years old, rattling around in rooms that felt too large, too empty. Patricia still came to check on me, though there was no one to care for anymore. "You need to think about your own future," she said gently. "This house is too big for one person." She was right, but I wasn't ready to let go. Not yet. I spent my days sorting through Vincent's things, his clothes, his books, his drawings and plans for buildings he'd designed. Each item was a memory, a piece of our shared history. I couldn't bear to throw them away, but I couldn't bear to keep them all either. So I donated them slowly, piece by piece, letting other people wear his jackets, read his books, appreciate his work. Spring came. The magnolia bloomed. I planted a garden, something I'd never had time for when Vincent needed care. I joined a book club. I volunteered at the library. I built a life that was just mine, not defined by being someone's wife or someone's mother or someone's caregiver. It was strange. It was lonely. But it was also, in its own way, free. I received one more letter from Marcus, 6 months after Vincent died. He'd been notified of his father's death through official channels. This letter was shorter. "Dear Mom, I'm sorry I wasn't there. I'm sorry for everything. When I get out, if you'll allow it, I'd like to visit Dad's grave. I'd like to pay my respects, not as the son who betrayed him, but as the man who's trying to become someone better. I understand if you say no, but I'm asking anyway. Love, Marcus." I sat with that letter for a long time. The anger I'd carried for so long had dulled to a tired ache. Vincent was gone. The house was secure. The legal battles were over. What was left to fight for? Maybe, I thought, what was left was the possibility of something else. Not reconciliation exactly, not trust, but perhaps the faintest glimmer of grace. I wrote back. 1 paragraph. "Marcus, when you're released, you may visit your father's grave. I'll meet you there. We'll see what happens after that. Claire." I mailed it before I could change my mind. 2 years passed. I sold the big house, the one Vincent's grandfather built. I couldn't maintain it alone, and every room held too many ghosts. I bought a small cottage near the river, with a porch and a garden and room for everything that mattered. I brought Vincent's ashes with me and scattered some of them by the water. On a Tuesday in March, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Mrs. Carver?" A man's voice, tentative. "It's Marcus. I was released this morning. I'm calling to ask, if the offer is still good, if I could visit Dad's grave." My heart pounded. "When?" "Whenever you're comfortable. I'm in no hurry. I have all the time in the world now." We arranged to meet on Saturday morning. I arrived early at the cemetery, at the spot where I'd scattered Vincent's ashes under the magnolia tree. I'd placed a small marker, nothing elaborate, just his name, his dates, and the words, "Beloved husband." Marcus arrived exactly on time. I barely recognized him. He was thin, gray-haired, though he was only 40. Prison had aged him a decade. He walked slowly, carefully, like someone who'd learned not to make sudden movements. "Mom," he said, stopping a few feet away. "Thank you for this." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. He approached the marker and knelt down. He placed his hand on the earth and was silent for a long time. I watched him, this stranger who was my son, and I felt a complicated tangle of emotions. Grief for what we'd lost, anger for what he'd done, and beneath it all, a tiny, fragile thread of something that might, someday, become forgiveness. "I'm sorry, Dad," Marcus said softly. "I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better than me. You both did." He stood and turned to face me. "Mom, I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect us to have a relationship. But I want you to know that I'm not the same person who hurt you. I've spent 2 years learning how to be someone different, someone better. And whether you ever believe that or not, I'm going to keep trying to be that person for the rest of my life." I looked at him, really looked, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not charm, not calculation, just plain, honest remorse. "I believe you're trying," I said finally. "That's all I can say right now, that I believe you're trying." "That's enough," he said. "That's more than I deserve." We stood there in silence for a moment. Then I did something I didn't plan. I reached out and touched his arm, just briefly, just a connection. "I'm not ready for more than this," I said. "But maybe someday. Maybe we can find a way to have something. Not what we had. That's gone. But something new. Something honest." "I'd like that," Marcus said. His voice broke. "I'd like that more than anything." He left. I stayed with Vincent for a while longer, sitting on the grass, my hand on the earth where his ashes were scattered. "What do you think?" I asked him, as if he could hear me. "Did I do the right thing?" The wind rustled the magnolia leaves. A bird sang. The sun was warm on my face. I took that as answer enough. The ending came slowly, as most real endings do. Marcus and I met every few months, always brief, always in public places. Coffee shops, the park, once the library where I volunteered. We talked carefully, like diplomats negotiating a fragile peace. He told me about his new job as a handyman, about the apartment he rented, about the therapy he continued, about the 12-step meetings he attended for his gambling addiction. He showed me photos of the garden he'd started. He asked about my life, my health, my cottage by the river. We didn't talk about the past, not directly. It was there, always, a shadow between us. But we were building something new, something small and tentative, but real. On the 2nd anniversary of Vincent's death, Marcus asked if he could come to the cottage, help me with some repairs, fix the leaky faucet, patch the hole in the porch screen. I said yes. He came with his tools and worked quietly. I made lemonade. We sat on the porch afterward, not saying much, just existing in the same space without animosity. "Thank you," he said finally, "for giving me a chance." "You earned it," I replied, "by showing up, by being honest, by not expecting more than I could give. I'll keep showing up, he promised, for as long as you'll let me. And he did. Not every week, not even every month, but regularly, steadily. A son, not the one I'd raised, but the one he'd become through suffering and choice and the slow, painful work of change. I'm 75 now. My hair is white. My hands shake sometimes. The cottage is enough. The garden grows, the river flows, and once a month, my son comes to fix things and drink lemonade and sit in silence that is no longer full of ghosts. It's not the ending I imagined. It's not the family I dreamed of. But it's real. It's honest. It's what remains when everything else is stripped away. Vincent's ashes are under the magnolia tree. His memory lives in this cottage, in my heart, in the choices I make every day, and in the fragile, careful relationship I'm building with the son who betrayed us and is trying day by day to become someone worthy of forgiveness. I don't know if we'll ever get there, to forgiveness, to healing, to something that looks like family. But we're trying, and for now, that's enough. I think about that day in the house, when Marcus and Brielle stood over us with their plans to ship us away, when Vincent suddenly spoke with perfect clarity, when the envelope appeared like providence. How close we came to losing everything. Sometimes I wake in the night and imagine the other version of this story, the one where Vincent never had those moments of clarity, where the forged deed stood, where we ended up in separate rooms at Oak Ridge, waiting to die. In that version, Marcus won. In that version, the predators got everything. But that's not what happened. What happened is that a man with a failing mind fought back with the only weapons he had: patience and documentation and a few precious moments of clarity. What happened is that love, even dying love, was stronger than greed. This house, this cottage, this small, quiet life, we built it from the rubble, from betrayal and loss and grief that felt like it would never end. And it's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything. Thank you for listening to this long, complicated story. Thank you for staying with me through every turn. If it touched something in you, if it made you think about your own family, your own choices, please like this video and subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? What time is it where you are? I love knowing how far these stories travel, how many different hearts they reach. Some of you will have questions. Some of you will have opinions about what I should have done, whether I should have given Marcus a second chance, whether Vincent was too harsh or too kind. Share those thoughts. I read every comment. Your perspectives matter. If this story helped you in some way, consider sending a super thanks to support the channel. These stories take time to research, to write, to share. Your support makes it possible to keep telling them. On the screen, you'll see 2 more stories. One about a daughter who learned her mother's secret too late. Another about a man who discovered his wife's hidden past. Choose what calls to you. There are so many stories waiting. Don't forget to subscribe. I share a new story every single day. Stories about real people, real choices, real consequences. Stories that matter. Until next time, I'm sending you love. I'm sending you strength. And I'm reminding you that family is not always blood. Family is the people who show up, who choose you, who prove through actions, not words, that you matter. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. And remember, you're stronger than you know. With love and respect, until we meet again.